The descent in the elevator was a silent, pressurized blur. We dropped 40 floors in seconds, the digital display flickering like a countdown to a different life. When the doors slid open, the lobby's gold-leafed ceiling felt oppressive, a gilded cage we were escaping. The Bentley Mulsanne was idling at the curb, its deep sapphire paint looking almost black under the street lamps of Fifth Avenue. The driver, a man whose face was a mask of professional indifference, stepped out to open the door. The interior of the car was a sanctuary of Connolly leather and polished walnut, smelling of expensive stillness. "Where to, Miss Sterling?" the driver asked, his eyes meeting hers for a fraction of a second in the mirror. "The marina," Annie replied, her voice sounding richer in the confines of the car. "And take the long way. I want to see the lights on the water." As we pulled away from the curb, the city began to smear past the windows. The neon of Midtown gave way to the cast-iron shadows of Soho. Annie shifted closer to me, the movement fluid and intentional. She didn't look at the city, she looked at me, her silhouette illuminated by the passing rhythmic flash of the street lamps. "You're very quiet, Jeffrey," she noted, her hand finding mine on the cool leather seat. Her skin was electric. "I've always preferred the company to the vintage," I countered, my thumb tracing the delicate line of her knuckles. "Besides, I get the feeling the long way involves a much more interesting vintage." She let out a soft, knowing laugh. "We're going to my yacht, the Aurelia. It's docked at Chelsea Piers. I find that when the city gets too loud, the only way to hear yourself think is to put a few inches of hole between you and the shore." I watched as we turned toward the West Side Highway, the Hudson River appearing like a vast, dark void beyond the piers. "You live a life of buffers, Annie. Penthouses, tinted glass, private decks. What are you hiding from?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in, her lips inches from mine, the heat of her body radiating through the Laurel Piana fabric of my suit. "I'm not hiding, Jeffrey. I'm filtering. I only want the things that are sharp enough to cut through the noise." She reached up, her fingers sliding into my hair, pulling me just a fraction closer. "And tonight, you're the only thing that feels sharp." The car glided to a halt near the darkened silhouette of the piers. The masts of the yacht swayed in the distance like a skeletal forest. The driver stepped out, but for a moment neither of us moved. The tension in the car was thick, a physical weight that made the air feel scarce. "The Aurelia is waiting," she whispered against my mouth, "and I promise you, the silence on the water is much more intimate than the silence in a penthouse." The heavy door of the Bentley opened, and the humid breath of the Hudson River rushed in, smelling of salt, diesel, and the deep, dark secrets of the Atlantic. The pier was a long, weathered tongue of wood and concrete stretching into the blackness. We walked in a rhythmic cadence, the sharp click of Annie's stilettos echoing against the silence of the docks, while my own footsteps were muffled by the heavy air. The Aurelia sat at the end of the slip, a 60-foot azimuth that looked less like a boat and more like a sculpture carved from moonlight. Its white hull gleamed with a predatory sheen, and the soft blue LED lights along the deck cast an ethereal glow onto the undulating water. "She's beautiful," I remarked, though my eyes were on Annie as she stepped onto the boarding plank with the effortless balance of someone born to the sea. "She's a distraction," Annie countered, turning back to offer me her hand. Her grip was cool, steady, and invited me into her world. As my feet hit the teak deck, the world shifted. The subtle sway of the boat made the city lights across the water, the skyscrapers of Jersey City, and the glowing clock of the Colgate building look like they were dancing. She led me past the outdoor lounge, where a bottle of Cristal was already sweating in a silver bucket, and down into the main salon. The interior was a masterclass in Italian minimalism, cream leathers, brushed steel, and recessed lighting that bathed everything in a soft, cinematic gold. She didn't head for the wine. Instead, she turned to face me in the narrow corridor leading to the master suite. "No more buffers, Jeffrey," she whispered. The boat gave a gentle lurch as a distant wake hit the hull, pushing her body directly into mine. I caught her waist, my hands finding the curve of her hips through the thin silk of her dress. "The city feels 1,000 miles away," I said, my voice barely a breath. "I can't even hear the sirens anymore." "That's the point," she murmured, her hands sliding up my chest to grip the lapels of my jacket, pulling me down toward her. "Out here, there's no audience, no board members, no social climbers, no reputations to maintain. There's just the tide and whatever happens before the sun comes up." She leaned back slightly, her eyes searching mine with a raw, piercing intensity that bypassed the flirtations of the penthouse. "Tell me, Jeffrey, now that we're away from the lights, are you still the observer, or are you finally going to join the story?" The engine hummed deep below our feet, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to sync with my own pulse. I didn't answer with words.
I leaned in, closing the final inch of space between us, as the Aurelia rocked gently on the dark, unforgiving water. The sun didn't rise so much as it bled into the sky, a bruised palette of violet and pale gold that began to illuminate the jagged teeth of the Manhattan skyline. Through the porthole of the Aurelia, the world looked soft, almost forgiven. The frantic energy of the night before had settled into a heavy, comfortable stillness, broken only by the rhythmic slap of the Hudson against the hull. I woke to the smell of espresso and the faint, lingering trail of that sandalwood perfume. Annie was already up, wrapped in a plush white robe that looked like a cloud against her tan skin. She was standing on the aft deck, a small porcelain cup in her hand, watching the city wake up. The high society siren of the penthouse had vanished, replaced by someone quieter, her hair slightly tousled by the river breeze. "You look different in the daylight," I said, stepping out onto the deck. I had discarded my tie, my shirt unbuttoned at the collar, feeling the cool morning air ground me. She didn't turn around immediately. She kept her gaze fixed on the George Washington Bridge, shimmering in the distance. "Daylight is the great equalizer, Jeffrey. It exposes the cracks in the gilding. Most of the people we saw last night are currently terrified of what the sun is showing them in their mirrors." I walked up beside her, our shoulders almost brushing. The intimacy of the night was still there, but it had morphed into something more translucent, more fragile. "And you? Are you terrified?" She finally turned, her eyes shielded by a pair of dark Celine glasses she had just slid on. The mask was back, but it was thinner than before. "I've lived in the sun long enough to know where the shadows are," she said, offering a small, enigmatic smile. "But I'll admit, the view was better last night." A sleek black car was already waiting at the end of the pier, its engine humming a low, mechanical growl. The dream was ending. The gravity of the city was pulling us back to the ground. "Will I see you again, Annie? Or was this just a tour of the heights for a man who lives in the lowlands?" She reached out, her fingers lingering on my cheek for a second too long for it to be casual. "New York is a small island, Jeffrey, and I think you've developed a taste for the thin air." She handed me her empty espresso cup, a gesture that was both a dismissal and a promise. "Keep the jacket. It looks better with a bit of a story attached to it." As she walked down the gangplank toward the waiting car, she didn't look back. I stood on the deck of the Aurelia, watching the sapphire Bentley disappear into the morning traffic of the West Side Highway, wondering if I had truly stepped into her world, or if I was just another beautiful rarity she had collected for a single starlit evening.